Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you're joining us from. And welcome to the WTA webinar ground segment, Just Service. My name is Robert Bell. I'm Executive Director of the World Teleport Association. And if you're not familiar with us, we spend every day advocating for the commercial and other interests of teleport operators, as well as promoting excellence in operations, technology, and business practices by those same companies so that everybody, including customers at the end, win. This webinar comes from a recently published report. Ground segment just a service is growth in this new thing called ground segment as a service, an evolution or revolution. It's funny to me, when I first heard the term, I remember thinking that sounds like a contradiction in terms. I've never actually met a data system that could talk to an orbiting satellite. But of course, GSaaS is a reality, and traditional ground segment providers, I think, risk finding themselves in that position of the taxi drivers who drove around town trying to find fares to pick up, when another set of companies had come up with an app that we could use to call a car to us. And so that's the kind of dynamic we're facing in this industry, and it's a very, very positive one ultimately for everybody involved, or at least that's what we believe here at WTA. This, like most of our webinars, are produced with the help of something we call the Technology Advisory Board. And you'll see its members over there on the right of your screen: Comtech, Kratos, Network Innovations, US Government, and SpaceBridge. And it was formed because increasingly, as we move forward in this year and in succeeding years, business is going to depend upon a deeper understanding of technology innovation, not just by the engineers and the technical folks, but by business leaders, by business development leaders, by salespeople. So that technology, that Technology Advisory Board exists to provide guidance on those technology advances and also to advise on smart buying options. The membership in it is available to leader and patron members of our association that are developing manufacturing and marketing technology. So if you want some more information about that, please contact Randall Barney at World Teleport Association. His address is right there on your screen. So today's agenda: after this brief introduction, I'm going to share some key takeaways from that report with you, and then we'll get to the real experts who have joined us to talk about what this movement and business model is all about. And finally, I want to take a moment to thank 5 companies that whose extra financial support for WTA makes it possible for us to do our research reports and our webinars, and they are Eutelsat, Intelsat, Kratos, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and SES. So the takeaways from the report, there are basically 3 of them at the very highest level. And one is about definition. What exactly is it that most of the ground segment as a service providers are doing? Why did they get into business? And what they're doing is meeting intermittent demand, regular but intermittent demand, using the assets mostly of partner companies. And that provides maximum flexibility for access for those regular but intermittent demand customers on a pay-as-you-go model, but it relies on a network of physical facilities, of course, teleports, to actually make the connections that need to be made. Now, the traditional teleport sector is very interested in being partners of GSaaS companies. They, of course, have competitive concerns. Whenever anybody enters the market newly, you're going to have competitive concerns, but they do see opportunity in partnership. The question that's hanging out there is, how much value can that teleport operation on the ground running facilities provide to the GSaaS? Because value added is basically what the teleport industry is all about. And the one thing that everybody who commented in this report could agree upon is that innovation in space is proceeding now at very, very fast rate, much more so than in the past. And that means ground segment has got to really develop a lot faster than it has been. And today's ground segment, unfortunately, is badly suited to a future of software-defined satellites, LEO constellations, and a much more diverse customer base because of its very intensive hardware and analog basis. And that's something that's going to be undergoing major digital transformation in the years to come. So an opportunity to introduce our panelists. Brad Bodie from Atlas Space Operations. Joining Brad is Christopher Richens, the CEO of RBC Signals. Michel Dothi, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at Nexsat in Europe. Paul Sandoval, who's Senior Sales Director for LATAM and the US at Integrasys, the Spanish company. And Patrick Melvis, Head of Business Development for Swedish Space Corporation. So you have 5 service companies doing some very innovative things in this marketplace. So, gentlemen, first of all, welcome. the companies that you represent are all in this ground segment as a service business, but they are definitely not identical in their approaches to it. So I'd like to start by asking each of you to describe the ideal customer, your ideal customer, the kind of organization that can get the maximum value out of what you offer, and what that value is that you provide. And why don't we start with Brad?
I'm not sure that there's an ideal customer because our customers do span a lot of the industry, from communications to DoD to Earth observers. Obviously, Earth observers in LEO are most common. But there's two types of customers at extremes. You've got the customer who needs some kind of short-term service, which we're seeing more and more because they're launching test satellites, or they just need LEOP support. So it might be 3 months, 6 months, a year, which is fairly short. Then, ideally for projection purposes, I would say that if there is an ideal customer, it's the customer who needs long-term support over many years, and they need a large number of minutes across the globe, not necessarily at one location, but in many locations to reduce their latency. So, there's a broad range of customers that we do serve. And the customers that we're looking for, the types of customers, are the ones who really want to focus on their satellite and not have to worry about the ground segment. We want to support them through a lot of the software we've done and written that provides details about what's going on the ground equipment, actually analyzes every single pass for the customer, provides one entry point in the cloud, can do translation of different formats. So no matter what ground site you're using, it doesn't matter, no matter what hardware is behind it. We integrated AWS ground station. We are a certified provider of AWS. We were the first. That means you have to go through a process where they validate your architecture and how you do things. However, customers can use AWS and Viasat through us without actually having to change a single thing. On our side, it's just flipping a switch and allowing them to schedule on it. So they don't actually have to interface with AWS at all. So for us, it's really about the customer who wants to scale, who wants added benefit, who doesn't want to deploy their own equipment across the globe, and who wants a great partnership. As a software company, we are continually improving, and we appreciate it when our customers give us feedback or give us ideas for tools that we hadn't thought of. So,
yeah, no, thank you. So what I heard from there, I'm just going to call out the things. I heard the word minutes, which is interesting because that has, goes back to something I talked about. I heard about the satellite operator in one way, shape, or form is a vital customer. I'm going to use the term, and don't be insulted, white label. You want to be able to be the front for AWS or Viasat, make it very convenient for your customer, and software, your software shop. Interesting. Christopher,
correct, right?
Could you come in and tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's an honor. I would say that everything that Brad discussed in his intro, I can fully claim as well. And so maybe to add a little bit beyond, I think RBC Signals also adds value to some distinct groups. For that early stage customer, we represent a lot of flexibility. So when customers are first entering the satellite market, they may not understand exactly what their requirements are. And so we take a very consultative approach to helping early stage, and particularly non-geostationary, but increasingly even geo customers understand what their communication requirements are. We can help them understand the regulatory environment and the challenges that they may face around the world. And we help them build a holistic ground communication architecture so that as they grow, the investments they're making as an early stage company can be built upon, and they don't have to throw everything away as they come out with their operational constellation as they move past their test and demonstration missions. And so that ends up being a strong support for these early entrants to the industry. And then as we move to the other side, to the customers that are really hitting the growth phase as they're beginning to populate their operational constellations, many of them see a significant price barrier to continuing to have to pay a price per minute for all of the communication that they're going to need for their satellites. And so RBC Signals offers the ability for basically to capture the economics of ownership without having to actually own the assets. So what that looks like is we offer them the opportunity to lease antennas on a full-time basis where they are guaranteed all of the highest priority access to it anytime their satellites are in view. And rather than paying per minute, they're able to pay just a flat rate per month, which as their constellations grow, as the utilization of those antennas goes up, it drives their unit price per minute far below anything that they would see on the open market for a pay per minute. And so we're proud of our ability to deploy those kind of turnkey systems anywhere in the world.
Thank you. Very interesting. I heard what I heard out of that was flexibility, but also something very interesting. You basically talked about the customer needing some assistance in defining their requirements, and that's every teleport operator does some of that. But one of the things that's fascinated me about this sector of the business is you're basically expanding the market. You're kind of creating new customers because they don't know what they need yet, some of them, and you help move that forward. So very, very interesting. I love that leasing model. Interesting, because the economics of this are just very fascinating. They're totally based upon what the customer needs. Let us go next. I guess we'll go over to Europe and listen to Michelle Dothie. Michelle?
Thank you, Robert. Okay, do you hear me now?
We do, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, yeah, I thank you very much for this invitation. And in fact, I think you are a little bit different animal in your gallery. In fact, we are a satellite service aggregator, and clearly, in fact, we are, in fact, aggregating hubs together. And our, in fact, ideal customer are teleports. As soon as possible, as simple as that. And in fact, we are, how we do that? In fact, we develop an OSS BSS, and with this OSS BSS, we are aggregating hubs together. How do we do that? Then we are connecting hubs. When we connect hubs, we are connecting two things, the API and also the VNO capacity that, in fact, we are routing to the nearest POP. We have 3 POPs for the time being, 1 POP in Singapore, 1 POP in Brussels, and 1 POP in Orlando. And in the POPs, we are doing the traffic shaping ourselves, with traffic deep packet inspection, and also the breakout to the internet backbone. And thanks to that, we are able then to aggregate capacities worldwide. And typically, now the best example I have is for teleport operators having, in fact, hubs in different continents or different brands. With our solution, we can help them to unify all the management of all the infrastructure and at IP level. And then if they need to, then they have different possibilities. Either they can aggregate this for their own customers, but if they want to share it to other teleports, they can give access to other other hub operators in order to share the infrastructure, and then help to have more profits from and more profitability from the huge investments that teleports and hub operators are doing. And I think that is especially important nowadays when we see some big, very, very big guys having bigger pockets than all of us together. And in order to offer them, to offer to our customers a new solution where we can help each other and avoid to make investments that is already done by some other teleport and some other hub operators that can join, in fact, the collaborating platform that we are now constituting. And for the time being, for example, we have 25 teleports already connected, something like 30 hubs of different brands, iDirect, Dialog, Jupiter 2, and soon we will have all the other brands missing, then Gilat and also Comtech, and we are managing. We have the worldwide coverage, and we have the coverage in Ku band, in the C band, and also in K band. A lot of beams, and in total we are managing something like 100 beams. Then our solution is really to aggregate, and it's a pooling and sharing platform indeed. And now we are adding also some security layer to address also the governmental market in Europe, but now also in some other countries in the world.
Well, thank you, Michel. The big takeaway for me from what you said was global scale, and that's something that, as you say, a company like Speedcast, let's pick one, they invested huge amounts of money in making that happen for themselves. You're virtualizing that.
Exactly, and we made it available for everybody in order to help our industry to collaborate and reduce their cost and be more profitable with all the investment that is already, it's billions that are already there on the table that we have to make the best usage of it.
Yeah,
that's what we can provide with our platform.
Thank you. Let's turn next to Patrick Melvas, a gentleman whom I'm just meeting today for the first time. So welcome aboard, Patrick. Please tell us a little bit about SSC.
Thank you for having me. So as you say, we are, as a ground station provider, we are a little bit different than both Brad and Christopher, as just described. On the other hand, we, as all ground station service providers, have designed our services for utilizing the benefit of automation, virtualization, and are constantly benefiting from that. And of course, that comes from the need of being scalable. I think, Brad, you talked about scalability, and that is crucial. The market is expanding, and we have to be able to expand with it. But yes, we have a bit difference in building up our approaches of offering, as we are building it up on mainly owning our own assets. And with SSC Connect, we also have a very wide palette of services, all from LEO to Lunar and beyond. So the best customer, if we're now looking at the question, is actually a customer that knows what degree of service level they actually would need and involve us early. And I do think involving early is a key, because if you know what you want and you involve us early, we can then select the best matching product for you, providing or for the customer, providing the highest value and for the buck already from the start, including, I think you, Chris, said a good customer is a customer that has a high need for volume. And if you have that kind of customer from the beginning, you then, of course, design the product or pick the product that is suitable for that market. So I would also say that we don't see a specific type of organization that can get the maximum value. It's typically where the end user of the service, so not necessarily the customer actually, have a need for a reliable service that they can really depend on. I think that's where we add the most value. Of course, if there's a volume customer, and with higher frequencies, we can support that as well, or far away from Earth. That's also quite typical where we benefit from our assets. So I do think we share a lot of things, but we're also a little bit different.
Well, absolutely. That's what makes a market.
Yes.
If we turn finally to Paul Sandoval. Now, Paul, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, because unless I'm mistaken, and please feel free to correct me, your company does something a bit different from the rest of these. Integrasys does many different things, but what I liked about having you join us was that this as a service model is not just for end-to-end connectivity. It's also for all the different elements that are part of this complex satellite communications business. So could you tell us a little bit about your link budget tool? Because I thought it was a great, I worked a little bit with the company while you were developing it. And I think it's a great example of an as a service doing something that up till now has been just as a pain in the neck.
Well, thank you for the invitation and the question. I personally have a lot of experience on networking, satellites, selling capacity, megahertz, and what have you. So one thing I realized that for the design engineer, life was very easy before. We just had a geo satellite point-to-point link, and that was about it. We need to choose the size of the antenna, the box. So like everybody had a bag of tricks and say, well, I buy an antenna from, say something, ProLink, and there is these guys that make transceivers, modems, and so on. So now life has become more difficult. So what we do in Integrasys is to eliminate the place for error by developing tools that help all aspects of a network design. So from designing the network to managing the capacity, to deploy the VSATs, monitoring the spectrum, detecting interference, mitigating the interference, and geolocation of the interferers is key nowadays. So to add confusion to the designer, we have HTS satellites, we have VHTS satellites, we have LEO constellations, and we also have 5G competing for spectrum on the satellite area. So how do we deal with all that? So we have to coexist, essentially. So when one of the tools that you mentioned, Link Budget, we came up with the Beam Budget, and it has evolved as we see more and more technology being deployed. What we do with Beam Budget is essentially automate the process and eliminating the the little guy that was behind the curtains with the bag of tricks and know exactly how much gain got a 4.6 meter antenna from General Dynamics. So what we have done is a database that eliminates all the guesswork and doing all the parameters built in, whether it's a vertex antenna or a Kymeta phase array antenna or isotropic. I don't want to make advertising to anyone in particular, but I'm sure day to day you face those challenges. Now, ground station as a service also brings another challenge. Now you have choice. How do you analyze what's best for you? So what satellite is best for you? So what Beam Budget does is to take to the maximum level the automation. So we can do things like network analysis over regional area and give you information, usable information, so you can make decisions. We can do like 2,500 link budgets in 1 minute and give you usable information on what size of antenna, what information rate, what mode codes are the best for your network in 1 minute. So in a way that you can visualize that and report that and share that with your customers. The second thing that we have done is to download the standard files available in ITU and also from the industry on all the new LEO constellations. And we have LEO constellations that are bent pipes as the GEO satellites. We have LEO constellations that have inter-satellite communications. We have LEO constellations that are going to have optical links and also a networking on the space. And so that brings more confusion. So we are here to eliminate that confusion. And what we have done is to extend the link budget analysis to what is called a dynamic link budget on the performance of a network over LEO constellations. Finally, filing and regulations with ITU is complicated. Now, LEO ground station may interfere with GEO satellites. LEO station may interfere with a LEO satellite as well, of other constellations. We may have cases in where very little interference may happen from a LEO satellite to a GEO satellite. So name of the game, we need to share the bandwidth, we need to coexist, and we have developed a tool that makes an analysis that I was surprised. I mean, I fall off the chair when I hear that you need like 6 million link budgets to analyze everything that is happening while those satellites move like 16 times around the Earth, and how they affect, or they're going to affect the infrastructure that exists in the Earth and in the space. So we do all that and produce a document in a matter of hours that you can submit to the ITU to a file for new constellations on the space. So all that in a nutshell is what Beam Budget is all about. A lot of technology there, equipment agnostic, satellite agnostic, and we have done it in a way that it has essentially 3 models. One is CapEx.
I'm gonna stop you there because we're really getting into the weeds at this point, but that is cool. Just put it that way. That is cool. Because I want to actually turn. Thank you very much, Paul, because I actually thought I knew everything that Integrasys was doing, and I discovered that I don't. So thank you.
Thank you.
But falling off your chair, yeah, I would have fallen off my chair as well. I want to just turn back to this end-to-end connectivity topic for a minute, just to drill in with all of you on this issue of, specifically, I sort of asked you for your ideal customer. Nobody actually really talked about who their customer was, obviously not by name, but what companies are you primarily serving in this business? And well, we'll get to the second part of this. The second part of that question I want to ask about is, what's the relationship with the people who do own assets? Because they're obviously they're critical path, and yet they're just they're pointing a big piece of steel at the sky, and so you need them, and they maybe need you, which is what they're trying to figure out. So, Christopher, let's just start with you. I mean, what kinds of companies are typically coming to you for service?
So we see a broad range of customers coming to us. We see U.S. customers as well as international customers. We have civilian commercial customers as well as government customers, both in the U.S. and abroad. And these are customers that need everything from a test and demonstration mission support to turnkey ground station as a service, where we go and build, operate, maintain, and license a ground station on somebody's behalf. And that's both in the US and abroad. So it really is a wide range, broad spectrum of customers that are using these services. One other segment that I want to also identify here is we're talking to end-to-end communication. We have now a new segment that we're starting to serve with a product that we call dynamic spectrum leasing, which is really focused at the satellite IoT side of the business, which rather than just providing the ground station or gateway as a service, now we can provide the full end-to-end connectivity globally. And so we have a whole new set of customers that may have been our customers before to provide things like command and control of their satellites. But now we can help satellite IoT providers augment their services, particularly non-geostationary providers. We can provide them dynamic access to spectrum on demand around the world. So what that means for a non-geostationary satellite IoT operator is that we can provide to their customers periodic services using spectrum that they don't own. So, for example, we can turn on spectrum once an hour for 5 minutes, or once a day for 15 minutes, or 5 minutes every 15 minutes all day long in any geography around the world. And instead of having to pay for a long-term spectrum lease, we're able to stand up that beam and shut it down just for those times that they need it, so that they're able to use that. And that can be meshed together with their LEO operations, providing them a broader area of coverage and better response time to their customers. And so we're really excited about that new offering.
Well, it sounds cool. Who does own that spectrum that you're leasing?
So we actually have multiple partners that we're working with that have contributed spectrum.
Okay.
The public ones that I can talk about right now are Inmarsat.
Okay.
So we've signed a global deal with Inmarsat where we have access to their L and Ka band spectrum. Just at the end of last year, we did our first over-the-air testing where we demonstrated our ability to stand up and shut down those leases dynamically, and it's something that we're really excited about. And we have multiple customer proof of concept activities going on around the world right now.
So it's kind of the same business model as for ground segment, except it's in the space and it's invisible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, what I think I heard, and I'm going to ask the same question of another one of our panelists. But I mean, basically, you've got it tends to be heavily NGSO, non-geostationary. It tends to be satellite operators. That was a common theme I heard, and I'm sure it's not the whole story, but the majority, it seems, of your customers are actually have got assets in the sky, and that's what they're working on. Would that be an accurate statement?
I would say for the ground station as a service business, absolutely. But with this new space networking as a service with the dynamic leasing, then any IoT provider that wants to integrate a service can come to us for that end-to-end connectivity without the need of having satellites at all. So we can provide both the spectrum and the satellite connectivity if it's needed.
Okay, no, thank you. That's good, and it's yes, you're doing what a business is supposed to be doing, creating customers. So that's the way to make it work. Patrick, tell me. Let's talk a little bit about what are the industries and applications that your company focuses on.
So I would say that with SSE Connect, we can serve many different segments, all from CubeSats to explorers in lunar and beyond. And as a service with a clear interface, it can be used efficiently in many applications, including where data volume is reliable, communications needs reliable communications and latency, and it's all critical. Since we also operate our own global network, we have a large diversified capabilities in there, and we can offer a robust service. So it's very much about matching the need of the mission with our capabilities without using the right products, basically, that we offer under SSE Connect. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to share costs of operations for the systems and for the maintenance, etc. And I think we all see that one of the key elements is to use the virtualization and automatizations to do that efficiently and flexible, so that we can quickly change between different needs of the customers. So we are constantly, of course, increasingly doing this, and I do think that the connectivity that we are able to provide with what is probably the most diversified global network in the world, at least own-based, is providing this ability for the customer to grow with us as needed. So that's, I would say, is what we are focusing on service, to really be there for the customers.
Well, I like the cost sharing comment, because that's really where this entire industry got started. I don't know if any of you remember whether you ever worked in broadcasting, but there's a guy named Dick Tauber who ran satellite for CNN forever. And he had a wonderful phrase once. He said, if I could own it all, I would, because then I could control it all, but I can't because it's not affordable. You guys are making it affordable, but don't screw up. Anyway, he was a character. Let us turn to, let me see. Before I come to you, Michelle, I want to turn to Brad. And again, just, what kinds of companies, what are the industries and the applications that are most common for you at Atlas?
Well, truthfully, some of them, we don't know what they do. That would be more of the government related customers, the DoD and such. So I don't know. For the public companies, a few I can name: Black Sky Global, Capella. Capella is SAR, Black Sky Global is Earth observing electro-optical imagery. There's Planet. There's Loft Orbital or Loft. There's a long list of smaller companies as well. I could go on, but some of the applications range from, well, I would say the bulk of them are likely Earth observers outside of the government ones. My guess is those in some fashion are also Earth observers or communication satellites. We have to will there be time to answer questions? Because there's a question I want to answer, but I don't have to do it now.
My goodness, yes, thank you very much. I sometimes get so excited about this. So the answer is I will turn to that and start working them in. So you just,
Right.
if there's a question you want to answer, you jump on it. What do you got?
Oh, right now? I didn't want to delay.
Nah, it's all right. Go ahead.
It's a security question. He answered, someone asked, how is end-to-end security ensured for GSaaS as part of the build rather than a standalone bolt-on? I do think it's important on this topic, ground station as a service, that you do address security. It's something that's very difficult, which is one of the reasons we have to be careful about how we expand our footprint. We can't just let anyone join the network. Well, even though we have that capability, it's very easy because of the APIs and such. We have to vet every antenna, and then we have to have very strict security controls because we are NIST 181 certified and third-party audited. That's the important thing. If you need security, you have to make sure they're third-party audited, and there's an attestation for that. Also that they're pen tested. We are also pen tested. And that they have a thorough understanding of the security implications of every single thing that they do on their network. One of the reasons we integrated AWS and Viasat was because they have a strong commitment to security. Now, Viasat isn't there yet, but they will be in terms of their certification and third-party auditing. AWS, we all know, they take it seriously and they accredit and audit all of their products from start to finish. So it doesn't need to be bolt-on is the answer. Security should be addressed as a first-class objective of the entire system, both cloud and at the ground. And I know that it's easy to say that we self-audit, because a lot of companies will say they self-audit. That doesn't count. I mean, it does. It makes you feel good, but it's not the same as actually getting a professional third-party auditor to come in and take a look at your entire architecture. It's a painstaking process. One of our largest customers is NOAA, the National Oceanographic Agency. They do maybe, I don't know, 100 passes a day with us. And they require that of us. And the security rules are only getting bigger and stronger as we go. The expectations are higher, especially if you're doing business with the US government.
Well, yeah, self-audit is kind of like an open book test.
Right.
Listen, I've got to keep our time is getting limited because we're touching on so many great issues. I want to turn to Michelle because you described your customers as the teleport operators, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So is that the industry you serve, or are they partners in what
Yeah,
you do?
it's a little bit more than that. In fact, we are focusing on all people operating hubs. Then, okay, you have teleport operators that are operating hubs, but you have also satellite operators operating their own hubs. And okay, those are for us the most important market. And in fact, and with all those hubs interconnected together, in fact, we open them a lot of possibilities. Everything we do is without any capex. This is a first thing, very important. And in terms of business model, we are mainly working in revenue sharing. And this is helped a lot because revenue sharing, in fact, it's a pay as you go. And then, okay, if you need, for example, typically for a satellite operator, I will start with them. Then, okay, traditionally, they are selling megahertz. But more and more now, the market is asking for managed services. And either, of course, they can invest in hubs, and this is something they do. And of course, when they invest in hubs, they need to have also an OSS BSS in order to be able to address the market and develop their commercial offering. They have the billing, they need to have security, etc., etc. This is the first step. But then, okay, maybe sometime, because nowadays it's a little bit complicated to make a real business plan and because we don't have any crystal ball, and this is really a pity. But then, okay, the problem is that they are hesitating to invest in new hubs. Then what we do propose them is to connect to to resell services from their client having operating hubs on their capacity. And thanks to that, in fact, they can access directly, if of course the hub of the client is connected to our platform, then they can access to this platform, to this hub, in order to resell managed services made from this hub, the hub of their client. This is just an example how we can help them to start new services, to sell new business, to address new markets. And because also with our platform, we are able to be actually doing the traffic shaping ourselves, we can make any kind of service in order for them to address any vertical in the market. Then from dedicated services, from up to really best effort services based on voucher. We can shape any kind of service. And this is very interesting because they do not have to select a special technology or whatever. No, they can directly use the technology they have in place or the client have in place, or maybe also another teleport. And then, okay, they can start selling managed services from the existing infrastructure. And this is also the key word, is really to keep the maximum from the existing investments in order to make the profits at the end. This is always the same.
There's the word we're looking for.
Exactly. And then if they want to extend their coverage, of course, there are regional operators, like for example, you know, all the names of regional operators, but okay, they would like to offer worldwide services to extend their coverage. And this is something they can do really easily from our platform. Typically, I have an example with Access. Access is connected to our platform. They have, of course, the coverage over Europe and okay, some part of Africa. They can see, of course, the sky over Germany. But now, if they have a request, for example, from Asia, from I don't know, from Australia, for example, but then of course they cannot offer this themselves because they don't have. Then of course they can contact teleport locally, make an agreement, etc. But then what we offer them is they can pick up directly it from our platform because we already have this service available at the location, and then in fact we manage everything. We can also manage the public IP in order for the terminal in Australia to use the public IP address of Access in Germany. We do everything. All the contracts are already signed. The price is known, and then they can integrate it in their website and offer the connectivity to their client without anybody knowing, in white label, of course, knowing that in fact it's Nexat providing this in white label. Then to, in this case, the example of Access. Then this is typically the kind of thing we do. And on top of that, we have our own network of local partners worldwide. We have something like 100 worldwide. Then they are able to make the installation locally, to provide the license, to make the first level support. And this is also something where we can help satellite operator or teleport operator to monetize their investments.
Okay. So
I hope it helps.
yes, it does. Thank you. I want to just turn briefly to Paul, because Paul, I saw you nodding your head over that security question.
Yeah.
And so, Paul, could you just talk a little bit about it? I mean, why were you nodding your head over the security question? We all know it's important, but I think you had something to say.
We have a different approach to security because most of the security is on the IP side. So we have developed expertise on that, but we are not the only shop for that. So in where we specialize is, hey, there's a vulnerability on the RF side as well. And there's vulnerabilities on the firmware side. So don't go too far. For example, when the Ukraine invasion, Russians were able to downgrade firmware to the GSaaS, Viasat network, and they became every modem a brick. So that's an attack that ground a whole network. So that's where we come, and essentially we try to secure your RF spectrum. One other thing that we do is to secure your firmware by giving you keys to avoid that kind of a thing that download and can become a modem a brick. And the other thing that we do is also to detect things like fake cellular towers. Let's say a warship comes to port, the first thing that's going to happen is that everybody pull their cell phones and try to connect to a cellular tower, 5G, 4G, or 3G. And guess what? The attackers use that as a way to get into the war systems of that chip. So we have systems that secure also the enemy from doing that. Interference. There is amicable, if you can call it that way, or unintentional interference, and there is intentional interference. So we have developed that and masterized that, if you will, in where we're able to eliminate interference from a CW, the most common one, sweeping CWs or frequency hopping CWs, or even modulated signals. Like it's starting to happen right now with 5G and even the S-band and L-band TTC&M control signals to a satellite. So you want to knock down a whole constellation, knock down the TTC&M S-band band, whether it's unintentional or intentional. So that's what our space in where we are. And if I gotta say, our ideal customer can be anywhere in the supply chain of satellites, from satellite manufacturers to operators, virtual operators, or ground station as a service. All of you can be our customers, by the way. And
I can't.
but you don't know yet. And one of the things that we have done in that regard is to make the business model accessible to everybody. We can sell our software as CapEx. We can virtualize our software in your servers. If that's so that your security is such that you need to have software in your own data center. And we can provide software as a service using both AWS or Azure Microsoft cores that we have. And so that way, not all the software is possible, but most of our portfolio is virtualizable or provided as a service for tier 1 and tier 2 type of customers.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Paul. Thank you. Thank you. I think, yes, it's RF security is, well, Viasat put it on the map for us all, unfortunately, as you say, by creating a lot of bricks. We just have a few minutes left, and I just want to very briefly touch on the relationship with a operator of physical facilities. Michelle's already talked about this. It's a revenue share relationship. They go out, they establish, ways to make that work, and that's an established model. Brad and Chris, what is your model for working when you're connecting out to, you want to create a new capacity somewhere, you need a teleport operator to work with you. So Brad, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Ideally, we've been integrating, obviously AWS and Viasat, they have a large number of antennas. That works because there's one integration for many antennas, right? In the case of supporting NOAA, we integrated an antenna in Finland. We found it, sourced it, pitched it to NOAA, and then integrated with it. That's a third-party antenna that is kind of a one-off. those are a little bit more specialized in the sense that we have to find the matching customer and then the need. We try not to just integrate antennas unless we really need that antenna, because it may look good on a map, but it requires time and effort. And when you start to consider security, we don't like to do things too fast to where we have to ignore security. So, or put security to the wayside. So it takes some effort to do that and vetting that antenna. We have multiple in Australia that we've integrated that are also a third party. There's one coming up in Hawaii that it's a giant antenna in Hawaii. That's another third party antenna. So we do it. It just has to be driven by customer demand rather than just integrating for the sake of integrating.
No, well, that's the teleport business. You never build something if you don't need it, because you're going to go broke that way.
Right, exactly.
And so in these deals, is it a lease deal? Is it
Usually
service model?
revenue? I mean, it varies. We have an antenna in Rwanda coming online that's 9.5 meters. That deal is a little bit different than the one in Hawaii.
I'm sure.
Sometimes it's a revenue share. And there's about 5 different models for ground station as a service. I mean, it ranges from we manage the full antenna, everything about it, to we put our own rack of equipment there and manage our rack of equipment and tell them what our schedule is. You know, that's another methodology. There is are being paid to manage someone else's antenna for their customers, and we don't offer that antenna to anyone else. So really, it's about getting access to the software that does more than just provide antenna access. Ground station as a service is traditionally infrastructure as a service. It's access to infrastructure. What we are doing is we call ground software because there's a lot of tools that we've developed that add layers on top of just traditional infrastructure. I know there's not a lot of time to get into that, but
no, well, that's what your companies are doing, and it's just great because that rate of innovation is going to drive so much else in our business. That's why I'm so excited about it. Christopher, last word to you, because you're using somebody else's ground segment to make this magic work. What's your commercial relationship with those providers?
Yeah, so I'll say that we do build and operate and own our own ground stations as well. So as we're approached by customers, our first objective is to make the industry more efficient. So if those customers' needs can be met with existing infrastructure, we will generally do a search first to see if we can find an existing partner that has an antenna that's suitable. It may be a partner that we've already signed an agreement with. We may have to sign a new partner. If we can't find one, we have the ability to build new infrastructure. And so that's where we start to tap into our vast network of partners to reach out to say, hey, can we host some equipment at your location? And for us, unfortunately, that often ends up not being Teleport's. You know, Teleport's primary business model is to host antennas for profit. And we prefer to go to places that is an additional bonus revenue stream that they weren't contemplating. So a data center or a university or something else where the land is cheap and it's not their primary business model. And so we're able to then sign those hosting deals. But if we can find it, we'd always prefer to use existing infrastructure, and we generally do that on a revenue share basis.
Okay, thank you. No, that's interesting. We had a very interesting discussion at the WTA board meeting about this issue, and one of the things that I heard from every single operator there was, yeah, we want to talk to these folks because sure, it's revenue and let's talk. So they may be more open to it than you think.
Robert, can I just add?
Please,
I should mention that we do build antennas too. Sure. We have 8 of our own. It's just, I mean, in order to do this business, sometimes you need to put them up, and then sometimes you need to integrate them, and it just really depends on the business model because it varies.
Yeah, of course it does, and it's money, it's cash. This is it's a lot of money to deal with. I hate to stop us there because it's been absolutely fascinating in terms of what it's opened, I hope, for our listeners, our viewers here. I mean, we're talking basically about a set of companies doing market expansion and customer development in areas that the more traditional teleport sector has never really, has not been able to penetrate. I think that's potentially a very exciting development, as well as the opportunity to scale operations for less. to make a long story short. So there's a lot of potential here that I think that collectively we're just beginning to tap, and I hope that we'll see a lot more of it in the future. So I want to, first of all, I just have to bring us to a conclusion, but I want to thank very much Brad Bodie, Christopher Richens, Michael Dothie, Paul Sandoval, and Patrick Melvis for joining us and spending a very interesting 45 minutes with us. So gentlemen, thank you. Coming up for WTA, our next appearance is at Communicasia 2023, June 7 through 9. We'll have our project and membership director, Randall Barney, there. You can reach out to him at rbarney@worldteleport.org. In terms of what's coming up next from research, we already have published Managing Multi-Layer Connectivity, but I wanted to point you to it because it explores in a very interesting report how the teleport operators are integrating multipath, multi-orbit networks into very competitive services and managing the technology change rate, which was, I think Paul Sandoval did a great job of explaining just how enormous it is. And then coming up in September, we'll have Designing the Digital Ground Segment of the Future, because our industry is challenged to do digital transformation on a massive scale, and its future literally depends upon it, and we're going to begin drilling into how that's exactly going to take place. So thank you very much for joining us and spending some time with some folks who really can point you to future possibilities you may not have considered. For WTA, I'm Robert Bell.